Okay, great. It looks like we're live. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. I am Diana Gomez, the Advocacy Manager here at Progress, Texas. And for Hispanic Heritage Month, hello.
Hi there, how are you?
Hello. For Hispanic Heritage Month, we wanted to take a closer look at some of the candidates that are running for the state legislature, and especially highlight some of our Latinx candidates. So,
sorry.
So today we have Roland Gutierrez, who's running for Senate District 19, Natali Hurtado running for House District 126, and Eric Holguin running for House District 32. Hi, everyone. How's everybody doing?
Fine. How are you?
We're good.
Great.
Doing good, doing well.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear. And just to start off on a light note, how are each of you staying grounded during this pandemic, and what's something that each of you is looking forward to?
Natali?
Sure. So staying grounded, that's a great question. I don't know if I really am staying that grounded just because, I'm a mother to 3 girls. Our 16-year-old is actually sitting right here next to me doing online classes. We have a 4-year-old, 2-year-old. I guess what I'm staying grounded by the support of my husband, my family, and just keeping, the eye on the ball and making sure that I'm doing everything I can on my end to make sure that we flip this district. What I'm looking forward to seriously is November 3rd, to get some sense of I don't know if normalcy is the word, but I'll go with that for now. I'll go with some sense of normalcy and hopefully a very strong victory, not just in this district, but as in Texas as a whole and this nation as a whole. And so I think that's just what it is on my end here in Houston, just, trying to figure it all out day by day and just knowing that, there's so much at stake and just staying very focused.
Wonderful. How about you, Eric?
It's been interesting. It's been stressful, but the way I sort of keep my level-headedness is just by being active and physical and working out and running, doing my home workouts because I can't really go to the gym anymore. And so it's sort of just releasing stress and reading and listening to music and try to separate a lot of the I don't want to say noise, but a lot of what happens throughout the day. Separate that and have some one-on-one time essentially with myself, and clear my head and stay focused because if we're not taking care of ourselves, then we can't be the best candidates possible. So that's a lot of it. Eating healthy, it's important to have a healthy diet. I kind of went off whenever COVID struck. I kind of went off on a little tangent of foods that weren't necessarily the best for you, but I pulled it back together. And so it's just basically self-care at the end of the day.
Yes, I definitely resonate with the food tangents and the comfort foods. I leaned heavily towards a lot of corn puffs and candies. What about yourself, Roland?
Yeah, no, I'll tell you that, just kind of focus on my family. I've got 2 children, 2 beautiful little girls, and, they're struggling with virtual learning here from home and doing well, actually. And my wife and I are just doing the best we can. We've got a lot of work to do, and keeping everything going is just kind of in a normal life is hard under this COVID. We have a law practice where I have 10 employees. I promised them all that nobody was going to get laid off. And, we've been able to do that, as you both, God willing, are about to find out. As you enter the state house, you got to keep a day job. And so we're one of a few states that has a part-time legislature, and we're volunteers. And so it's certainly always challenging in our home because we're doing a lot of juggling, but I'm used to it. And this has been, we just kind of have to focus on family and friends and just kind of pray that we're all going to be well and hope for the best. And that's why I think people elect us. I think that we as a party, we as Democrats, I've always said that I felt that we have far more talent on our side of the aisle than the Republicans. I think that we're smarter. I think that we have better ideas. I think that we're also more willing to even listen to some of their ideas if they've got a good one. And so we have some challenges ahead of us as a state, but we're going to have to be completely grounded and completely focused as we enter this next session. And it's my hope that I'll be in the Senate now after doing 12 years in the House. And so we just got to stay focused, friends and family, and know that we're going to get through this and believe in God for sure. We're going to be fine.
Completely agree. Thank you so much for that. I just want to say I'm so excited to host this particular panel. I feel like growing up in Texas, I often didn't see myself really represented in a lot of the politicians. And so I'm so excited to see your faces and to somehow see myself in those faces as well. It's very inspirational. And so one question I wanted to ask each of you is, what motivated each of you to run for office, and what's it like to run for office as a Latino or Latina candidate?
So I guess I'll start off right now. So what motivated me to run for office is I think my unique story and how I even got to where I'm at today. I'm native Houstonian, native Texan, first generation American. My dad's from Uruguay, my mom's from Honduras. And we had an amazing childhood upbringing, my older brother, younger sister. And around the age of 16, I started working at the Olive Garden as a server, started attending the University of Houston after graduating from high school. And my parents, or I started dating this guy. We were dating for about 4 months, and my parents gave us an ultimatum of either getting married or breaking up. And of course, when you're 19, you know love and you know everything. And so we decided to go ahead and get married. And about a year or so after that, we welcomed our daughter, Madison. And I remember vividly taking him to work one day and getting a phone call after Maddie and I were heading out to Walmart to get groceries, and being told that he had been involved in a crime, years prior, to knowing him. And to make a long story short, I became a young single mother because he ended up getting 2 life sentences. So young single mother overnight, had to rely on Medicaid, had to rely on food stamps, had to rely on my family and my community. And if it were not for those things in place, there is no way that I would have been able to graduate from college. No way I would have been able to take care of my daughter, provide health care, preventative care for myself. And so, fast forward to where I'm at today, and I see the state and the folks that are supposed to be leading us to a better future are instead imposing policies that are intentionally trying to keep us, and by us, I mean immigrants, I mean women, I mean Latinos, trying to keep us down from moving forward. And so, when I moved to this district, I was originally from southwest part of Houston. We moved to this area, the side of Harris County, because we were building our family, growing on our family, and we wanted safe neighborhoods. We wanted great public schools. And so I moved into this district, not ever thinking I would run in here or in this seat, because it has been historically such a red seat. And then 2016 happens, and then you see, you wake up to President Trump being your president, and then you're experiencing years after year of hate and this agenda to divide us as a nation and as a community. And so, I decided in 2018 that I'm going to run for this seat because I didn't do enough. I clearly did not do enough in 2016. And so it was a conversation that was hard to pitch this seat to anyone. They said, there's no way in hell it's going to flip, Natali. It's historically been a Republican stronghold. And so just knocking on doors, talking to voters, very little money in the bank. And we made the case. We brought a district that either would never have a Democrat that would run, or a Democrat would lose by over 20 percentage points. And we brought that down to a single digit. And that speaks to the energy that is in this district, in this state, and in this nation, that they're just sick and tired of the status quo. They're sick and tired of being told what is better, what's best for them, and not being heard. And so all of this is what makes me want to run, and what is making me run, and maintaining the passion to really serve people and have their voices heard in Austin.
Thank you, Natalie. Roland, what about you? What motivated you to run, to keep running? And what's it like to run as a Latino candidate?
You know, I'll tell you that I'm the first generation American. My parents were both immigrants to this country. My mother actually was from here. She passed on when I was very young. And my stepmom, who raised me, she was an immigrant and spoke Spanish, you know, for the first 6, 7 years of my life. And then somehow I developed a Western accent. My kids always make fun of it. But I guess it was all those John Wayne movies growing up. I don't know. But I first I went to law school, and my first office, I decided to go work for myself. I was working for an insurance defense company when I was in law school, and I didn't really kind of like the work that I was doing on that side. And I wanted to do more plaintiff's work, more just help, just kind of day-to-day street lawyer stuff and helping people. And my first law office was on a street called South Pereza, and I actually worked in the front and lived in the back. We had a lot going on in the community. There was a lot of prostitution. There was a lot of drugs. There was a lot of crime. And it was just kind of a similar story. You know, I felt that we could do better. I used to see kids walking to school, no sidewalks, you know, going down alleys where I knew that, you know, there was needles in alleys and so on. And so that inspired me to run for city council. And I ran in 2001 and I lost by 150 votes. And I kept at it again. In 2004, I ran for county commissioner and didn't quite do as well, but did okay. I thought I was done. And then the police officers union in 2005 asked me to run again for city council, which I did. And so I've won ever since, save and except the special election we ran in 2018 for the Texas Senate. And so when you run in a special, you get to keep your seat. I'm running again now. And it was always part and parcel of me trying to do better for this South Side of San Antonio community and trying to make our community locally and generally in Texas a better place to live. I was telling someone last night that, you know, we can do better. We can legalize cannabis and help people through that process. We can generate revenue. We can really do things on global warming and really start talking about those big transformative issues. A lot of times in the legislature, you're working around policy matters and you think that maybe I can't do something that's going to have an immediate effect on my community. But, you know, in 12 years, I've been able to do a lot of things that have affected people back home here in San Antonio. And I think that all of you are going to be, that will, God willing, realize that. Running as a Latino, I will tell you, is an experience. I think I'm a little older, I think, than the other two folks on the call. But you always kind of have, you know, I grew up in the 70s, and I still remember a lot of, there was a lot of racism then, and clearly there's still a lot of racism now. And I remember growing up working in a boot store as a young man, and I was speaking Spanish to one customer, and they were both regular customers of mine, and the other gentleman I was speaking English to. And when I finished with the guy from Mexico, and you know, he took his boots to the counter, and I was dealing with the other gentleman. He said, "Roland, he said, I didn't know you were Mexican." I said, "Well, I'm Mexican American," and so on. And he says, "Roland, you're a good Mexican." And so those are the kinds of things that unfortunately kind of stick in your mind. And you'd like to think that the world has changed and things are better. But clearly with this president and clearly with kind of the sentiment that he's brought out, you know, a lot of that stuff still lingers. And so I think, you know, you'll find that even in the Texas House and the Texas Senate, some of those things can still be in the background. And they're not on the surface, but they're in the background at times. And so those are the challenges, and you have to find a kind of work through that and put yourself in a position where you can work through that and focus on what you're there to do, which is do well for your community, bring back legislation that affects your community in a positive way. And all of those folks, all of those detractors, those naysayers, those folks that have that racist sentiment, God's going to handle them. And who knows, maybe this November, we're going to see some significant changes in the Capitol that will show them that there's a new future ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Roland. How about you, Eric?
Yeah, well, I come from a family of public servants. My dad's a public school teacher. My mother's a nurse. My brothers are veterans and they're state troopers now. My late grandfather was a judge for about 35 years in Jim Hogg County. And so people, I get this question a lot as to why are you running? What is it? My answer is it's public service literally runs in my family's DNA. It's just something that we were raised to do. I remember whenever I graduated college, my dad had said, you got your degree, you're going to go do great things, but just remember where your family's roots are, and your family's roots are in public service. And so, he kept trying to push me to be a teacher. I wasn't ready to be a teacher, didn't want to get into education. But I wanted to understand how government works and how to make government work for the people. And so, after I graduated from college, I kind of shipped off to New York City. And there I worked for a U.S. Congresswoman, and then worked for the New York City Controller, handling public policy and public affairs. And it was those experiences that really got me the understanding of how government can improve people's lives. It got me into the weeds of understanding policy and ways policy can be used to address a lot of the issues. And after the 2016 elections, I remember President Obama's outgoing speech where he essentially said, you got to take matters into your own hands. And I was like, you know what, you're right. And I kind of had the same sentiment that Natali had. I need to do more because obviously I didn't do enough in 2016 to ensure that we didn't end up where we're at now. And so came back to Texas here in Corpus Christi, graduated from here at A&M Corpus Christi, and I ran for Congress in the 27th Congressional District, which is one of the most gerrymandered districts in the country. It actually went to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I knew it was going to be an uphill battle, but I knew I had to prove that I could climb that uphill battle. And I ran a strong campaign. Unfortunately, we didn't make it through because #gerrymandering. But the silver lining was we won Nueces County. And so after the 2018 elections, we saw an opportunity here in House District 32. And within House District 32, it's a majority minority district. That's 54% Latino. And my opponent is one of the only representatives, one of the only two representatives in the whole state that is non-Latino, representing a majority Latino community. And so I think, it's time someone in House District 32, it's time the community House District within House District 32 have someone who reflects their values, reflects those working class values. And I just feel like we could do better and focus on a lot of the issues that are affecting our daily lives, ranging from healthcare to education to the environment. That's a very big issue here on the coastal bend. And so, I feel like we could do better, and I developed the skin to handle it. And then, being a Latino candidate, I sort of, my last name's a little funny, as we discussed previously. And so people think I'm Jewish, people think I'm Italian. Latinos typically know I'm Latino. And then there's also this issue of speaking Spanish. I'm not fluent in Spanish. And I remember as a kid trying to get my parents to teach me Spanish. My parents are fluent, my abuelita's fluent, everyone's fluent. But there was this old school understanding of you need to learn English first. And so, obviously we're raised to speak English, and unfortunately learning Spanish just wasn't a priority because there was this fear of needing to, there was this fear of being ostracized for being a Spanish speaker. And so, that's sort of where we are at now. But, learning because we have to do better.
Yeah, thank you. A lot of times when folks ask me if I speak Spanish, I like to say it's Tex-Mex Spanish.
Yeah, and I'm actually, just to chime in here, I'm in the same boat as Eric. My parents, they both, speak fluent Spanish, and they had a fear of, us being discriminated against once we went to school, not being put into ESL courses. And so they would talk with each other in Spanish, and the Spanish that I picked up was in listening to my parents, listening to my mamita, my abuela, and people say that, oh no, your Spanish is fine, Natalie. It's like, no, as a Latina, I should be able to flow this, whatever. And unless I'm in a comfortable environment or I'm one-on-one with someone, then I felt comfortable enough to speak in Spanish. But I think, I'm in the same boat as Eric and many other Latinos that, I don't know if it's necessarily that we don't struggle with our identity, but it's this question of, I think we're always faced with this question of, am I Latino enough? Am I Latina enough? Or, or am I lacking any just because my Spanish is not as fluent as one would think?
Yeah, there definitely had to be, and not had to, but there still is a lot of code switching. When I ran for Congress, a lot of the district went up into very rural Texas, like Gonzales County, Victoria, Lavaca, where the Latino population there isn't it's just not there. And so I would have to I'm Eric Holguin there, but then when I would be down in Corpus Christi and predominantly Hispanic communities, it'd be Eric Holguin. And so there was this kind of code switching between the demographics that I was in, because I had to, be more relatable to who I was speaking to. And that's something that I don't feel like I have to do anymore, and shouldn't have to do anymore. And so.
Right.
Thanks for sharing that. I feel like that's such an interesting dynamic that's uniquely Latino or Latina of having to straddle that barrier and sort of be in that, when talking about being Mexican American, Honduran American, living within that hyphen and being able to balance back and forth towards all of those identities. That's fascinating. Thank you so much. Wanted to also let our viewers know that if they have any questions they would like our panelists to answer, our candidates to answer, feel free to drop them in the comments. If we have time near the end, we will try and get to them. I did want to switch a little bit over to talking about the pandemic and COVID-19. COVID-19 has hit the Latino community especially hard, and this was only exacerbated after Abbott rushed to reopen Texas, misled Texans, and ignored common sense measures that would have protected our families. How has COVID-19 impacted your districts, and what are some of the issues that y'all are hearing about when talking to your community members?
I guess
No, go ahead, Eric. Go ahead.
Yeah, Corpus Christi was actually one of the largest hotspots. I mean, we kept making national news for Nueces County being a hotspot for COVID-19. And, what I kept hearing on the streets and from concerned citizens and constituents and voters was that they feel that they were being left to fend for themselves. Especially our frontline workers, our healthcare workers. My mother is a nurse who was actually doing COVID testing down in the Rio Grande Valley. And, every day she was out there, protected. And so, that was always a concern of mine, but people felt that there wasn't proper guidance, that there wasn't consistent guidance. There was a lot of mixed messages. And not only that, they felt unprepared in terms of having PPE, having medical personnel, having testing kits. At the state level, I believe it was a disaster. And so we really had to rely on our local officials to pick up the slack. But even then, a lot of our local officials didn't have the support of the state. And to my understanding, there was a lot of politics at play as well. And so, it was unfortunate to have cases rise that quickly. But even currently with schools transitioning into going to face-to-face, there's a lot of teachers, a lot of faculty and staff, people that work in the schools that are very concerned. And I don't have the updated number, but the last time I checked a couple of weeks ago, within Nueces County, there's been, I think, over 100 and something educators that have retired early or resigned out of fear from contracting COVID, because they didn't feel safe. And then whenever they got PPE, it was bare minimum, and just the resources just weren't there. And so at the end of the day, a lot of people sort of just felt that they were, everyone was just kind of on their own, with no clear guidance as to what's going to be done, what should be done, what level of testing, what percentage of testing we need to be doing to get a realistic view as to what's happening in the community, because a lot of people just had no idea what was happening.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, I think that Eric's experiences in Nueces County are very similar to what's happened here in Bexar. The testing and the tracing has been pretty lacking across the state. I penned a letter to the governor, and I asked them to test every Texan every 2 weeks, and I did that months ago. And one might think, well, that's impossible, but if you look at the city of New Delhi in India, they tested 29 million people in 10 days. That's a third world country. And yet we can't test 24 million people even once a month. We can't even test a fraction of those 24 million, not even 10% in a month, on a monthly basis. And so we have the money to do it. We have the means to do it. There's just not the political will to do it. And so where it's hurt Latino families, especially lower income families, it's really devastated on school start. We've got kids at home and parents that have had to, quit their jobs because they have to be home with their children. And so it's not that school is daycare for them, but kids go to school. And so with kids not being able to start school effectively, I think that we did a very big disservice in rolling out school start the way we did. Certainly not just in the Latino community, but in African American community, and just people at every end of that lower economic spectrum are having tremendous difficulties with school start and educating their children in a proper way. The other thing that's happened, and not so much in San Antonio, but in different parts of this district, this Senate district goes all the way to West Texas, all the way to Reeves County, which is the town or small city of Pecos, Texas. And I say that because it also encompasses Pecos County, which is Fort Stockton. Fort Stockton's done a decent job, but there's other communities that haven't. And with regard to connectivity, we now have seen the effects of this digital divide, and it does absolutely revolve around the economic consideration that lower income families simply don't have the same kinds of resources to be able to have the computers in the house, the tablets that are necessary. Even though school districts have done their part to try to supply people with those instruments of learning, we've had significant challenges getting them out into other parts of Texas, especially in rural Texas. And so we have a lot of work to do in this space. And I know that with the two other districts that you're in, in Houston, the Houston area, but rural Texans are going to have significant problems. Rural Latinos are going to have significant problems to access to education in the right way. I know that we're going to be able to get this because we've got great young, smart minds that are coming into the Texas Capitol. And so it's my hope that we'll be able to make some changes.
Definitely. How about you, Natali? How has COVID affected your region?
Sure. I mean, honestly, I don't want to be, repeating the same thing that they're saying, but it's very reflective of what's happening here in our district as well. It's unfortunate that, there is no blanket response. What we've experienced at all levels is just very reactive and not proactive. The state rep that's in this district is one in which balked at the idea of wearing face masks. Literally in the middle of our spike in July, he was holding indoor meetings with senior citizens without social distancing, without face masks, and it's appalling. It's appalling that people that we elect to be our leaders, to give us a sense of direction, especially during times like this, that's how he decided to approach this, by making this a partisan issue when it should have never been a partisan issue. Lives have been lost because of this virus. Jobs have been lost. I mean, one of the things that we were dealing in this district even prior to COVID-19 was this sense that so many businesses are leaving our area and not being replaced, either not being replaced at all or not being replaced with the same level of business that was there prior to. And so now you add on top of pandemic, and there's no guidance of how do we get through this as a state? How do we get through this as a nation? And so, those are the things that I'm looking to tackle. I work in my day job in management districts, economic development, and we've been able to help support small businesses that are in the defined areas. And, simple things, that, first and foremost, PPEs, making sure that they're getting that. If there's COVID testing, mobile COVID testing that's available, having that provided to apartment units that are in that district. And then even just buying local, trying to market this idea of buying local. If you want to eat out, get a gift card, take to go, that kind of stuff. And you don't see that in this district. I mean, and it's sad, because when you have that position as an elected official, you have that unique opportunity to bring light to your area, to bring resources. And unfortunately, he missed out, greatly by not using his position to help those that live in this district. And I know that, once he's out of office, it's going to be a sigh of relief for all those that are really afraid of what's to come tomorrow. And so that's really what I'm hearing on the ground. Of course, school is a big issue. As I stated, my daughter's literally sitting across the table from me in class, and our neighborhood actually sits between two school districts, Klein ISD and Cy-Fair ISD. And not even within these two school districts is there a sense of unity of how, our kids should be going back to school. To me, that's absolutely sad. We're not listening to our teachers. We're not listening to our bus drivers who have a real fear of going to work, and the ones that are responsible in teaching our children of the future. And I think that it's shameful that we're not even prioritizing, we haven't prioritized them in the past as far as making sure that they have the proper funding. And now we're not prioritizing not even their health. And so I'm looking forward to changing that, once elected.
Thank you, Natali. Besides COVID-19, what other issues matter most right now to Latino Texans? And do y'all believe that their needs are being addressed at the state legislature? If not, how do you plan to address them?
Natali?
Okay, thank you. So for me, I like the question because I think a lot of the issues that, we kind of set them aside like Latino issues. And for me, they're the same bread and butter issues as they are for every family. Do I have a job? Am I making a wage that can support my family? Are my kids going to a school that provides quality public education? And so those are the things that I'm hearing, regardless of whether or not you're Latino or you're white or Black. And those are the things that I think that we just need to be fighting for as Texans together. So, it's not probably the answer you're looking for, but that's just what it is for me. I don't think these issues break down necessarily based on, on our culture or our background. I think these are just everyday Texan issues that we need to be working for.
Yeah, for sure. I think that those everyday bread and butter, education, spending and whatnot, those are important. And we really need to we do really need to have a good understanding of HB3 and how education spending affects families on every level, especially the lower income families, because we need to do better for our kids, and we need to do better for all kids. I mean, we spend 43rd, 45th in spending, and our performance is the same. I mean, there's a complete and very true correlation to performance and spending, and so we need to do better in Texas. So it's actually absolutely adversely affecting Latinos, what we do in that space. But there's also a lot of stuff that these guys put forth that affects us very negatively. You know, SB4, show me your papers. You know, all the horrible voter ID stuff. I remember when I came in 2009, and remember I told you earlier that, you know, there was this kind of inherent racism in the House. In 2009, it was so freaking obvious. You know, every bill that had a benefit to a Texas resident always had this. You always had these one or two guys come up and say, except for undocumented, except for illegal immigrants. We'd always like to put illegal aliens. That was their thing. Their big red herring to scare the public. And so to scare their base off as if we were just some kind of scary, you know, zombie group of zombies that were coming to get them. And so that's the kind of politics that they play. And you've seen it now with Trump. You've seen it at this national level. Make no mistake that that God willing, you'll both be in the House. Make no mistake that you'll see that day in and day out. And they'll find their red herring. They'll find their boogeyman. And it's usually undocumented immigrants. And it's unfortunate. And, you know, at the end of the day, immigration is a federal debate. But we need to understand that our immigrant community is building Texas. You know, they're building our homes, they're building our construction sites, they're feeding us, they're in the restaurants working. And so we owe them a debt of gratitude. We owe them civility. We owe them a driver's license, right? I mean, that's something that affects Latinos, maybe not Latinos that can vote, but it certainly affects all of us. I mean, isn't it the small c conservative thing to do to give every undocumented person in Texas a driver's license, or the driving age folks that are driving, allow them to go get a driver's license, have them have insurance, right? In case they get in an accident. Our premiums, all of our premiums would go down if you would have less uninsured people on the road. And certainly you would also even know where folks are. And so you would think that something that this is a small c conservative thing to do. You think that the Republicans would want to do it, but under no certain terms have they ever acquiesced on this. And we have pushed back on licensure for undocumented, and they've refused at every level. And so we have significant challenges ahead of us with these folks. But understand that these people are there to they often make our lives harder. They often are not looking out for the best interest of the Latino community. And that is always in that foreground. And you will be fighting these causes. I promise you will. And you got to dig in, keep your head up, keep pushing forward, and understand that the end game is bringing back to your community and doing good things. But this fight has been ever present. It's going to continue.
Thank you. Eric.
Yeah, you know, a lot of what I hear, regardless whether they're Latinx or African American, white, whatever the case may be, is people are worried about their health care. We have people who are starting to get evicted from their homes because they lost their jobs or have hours cut. And so people are not able to pay rent. People are losing their health care because they lost those jobs. You know, people are having to rely heavily more on our food bank to be able to feed themselves. And so at the end of the day is, what is it that we are doing to address these issues? Because there's this idea that, you know, government shouldn't really be involved in that, and, you know, let the churches and let the nonprofits, let them take care of that. It's like, no, people are in pain right now, financially, emotionally, health-wise, And we have to step up and do something to address that. And so it really is these sort of daily life issues. Whenever I go out and talk to voters, I always ask, what is it that is bothering you? And if they say like, oh, I don't know, they can't think of something, I'm like, all right, what is it that is a thorn in your rear on a daily basis that is bothering you? Like, oh, okay, now, my medicine's too expensive. Oh, our property taxes are this. And so, for me, it's about having those conversations, what's actually affecting our constituents' daily lives, and focusing in on that. And that is healthcare, that is a housing crisis, that is the environment, that is clean air and clean water, that is food safety, that is also criminal justice reform, that is education. And so, I think the COVID-19, the pandemic, has just put a spotlight on all these issues, and really inflamed them in ways that we haven't seen before, because COVID-19 is inflaming them all at the same time. To figure out ways to and get creative and figure out ways to address a lot of these issues, because because a lot of people are facing a lot of these issues at the same time. And so that's something that that's affecting everyone, and we have to do better.
Definitely. And I have a final two-part question to round out our talk today. The questions are: Latinos are building power in Texas each election. We can see it by this panel and by the amount of folks that are registering to vote. There are now 5 days left until early voting begins. How do we continue to build this power during this election season? And do you have any final words for our viewers?
Man, I think that people just need to, I said this last night on another podcast or another Zoom. We've been talking about this sleeping giant when I was in college doing political science in the late 90s. And the sleeping giant, I think, still needs to wake up some more. Our numbers are still not as good as the African American community. We can do better, and we have to understand that everything that we do, everything that they do up in Austin, up in Washington, and everywhere else affects our communities. When I talk about legalizing cannabis because it's the right thing to do, it makes medical sense, it makes economic sense, we can tax it, we can regulate it, we can keep it out of kids, out of high schools and so on. We've been lied to on this issue for a number of years, for 50 years. And so I talk about it because we're here at an economic time where we're going to enter into this next session lacking anywhere between $5 to $10 billion. And we're lacking resources. It's going to be incumbent upon myself and others to try to find those resources. And those resources, and ultimately the lack of resources, is going to impact what happens and how we're able to distribute the goods and services of government. And so people damn well better get mad. You've got to see what happened with SB4. You've got to see what's happened with all of the mail-in ballot stuff. You've got to see what's happened with the voter ID stuff, and understand that these Republicans are trying, and I know that this group is not partisan, but I am partisan, and these folks are trying to take your power away. Por favor, vayan y votar. I mean, se tienen que enojar. You have to get mad about what's happening today. I mean, if Donald Trump doesn't make you mad, then I don't know what will. And so, if there's that old "don't get mad, get even," well, then get even. Go vote. Because that's the only thing that is going to that is going to create that equalizer. We have to win the House back. And these two seats are the way that we win the House back. This Senate seat that I'm running for is how we stop bad bills from coming onto the Senate floor, because I am the blocker that will be able to stop Dan Patrick's agenda. Get mad, get even, whatever you want to do. But you have to understand that everything that's happening to us day to day is a direct function of what lawmakers are doing in Austin, what lawmakers are doing in Washington, and none of it is helpful for us. We've got a long way to go, but we're going to do this together and with groups like you. I mean, we certainly appreciate it.
Thank you, Roland. Natali.
Sure. I mean, he said it so well. It's a matter of just, if you're okay with what's going on right now, then stay home or go and vote for Trump. But I'm pretty sure that you're not okay with this. And so the only way that we're going to be able to change this together is by going out and voting. Our campaign we put our efforts in making sure that we were registering as many people as possible. And, looking at the numbers, it looks like, we're doing a lot better. And my hope is that, we don't just stop at registering, but we actually do something with that and go out and vote. And so, you just hear it time and time again. The only way that we can make things change to benefit our community is by going out and voting. And so I leave you with those words, and, vote early, and, try not to wait till election day. Just get your voice heard.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, so I'm a big advocate for getting people registered to vote, especially our younger next generation. And, I come across people that say, oh, my vote doesn't matter. Oh, we hear all those excuses. And so whenever they say that, when they say my vote doesn't matter, and my response is usually, well, your landlord thinks it matters. The people deciding how much you get paid thinks it matters. The people that decide how many taxes are going to be taken out of your paycheck thinks it matters. The people that decide your tuition thinks it matters. And I tell them, you're literally allowing other people to decide how you're going to live your daily life. And once you put it into that perspective, they sort of realize, like, you're right. And so, we've been out registering voters as well, especially our college students. A couple weeks ago, I went to go pick up a pizza, and I was talking to the cashier. It was a young Latino young man, and I said, "Oh, are you registered to vote?" He's like, "Oh, no, I don't vote." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "How many jobs do you work?" And he's like, "Oh, I work here, and I work at the Dairy Queen down the street." And I was like, "If you don't mind me asking, how much do you get paid?" And it was, subliminal, very minimal pay. And I said, "Wouldn't it be nice to have a job, to have one job that pays a living wage?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "You know why you have to work two jobs?" He was like, "No." I was like, "Because you're making very little money, and let me guess, you're still living paycheck to paycheck, and not even living paycheck to paycheck, but those few days before you get paid again, your bank account's probably in the negative, right?" And he said yes, and I was like, I relate to that. And so once you start talking to these people about the issues and how voting can change that, there's sort of a switch that gets flipped on, and they start realizing, like, oh, okay. And I think the big issue is because there's been this idea that young people don't vote. They've never had those. No one's ever went and had those conversations. A&M Corpus Christi, I'm probably the only candidate that really goes to university and talks to college students, gives speeches, registers them to vote, really engages them, and they appreciate that. Because they appreciate that, and we have to make a concerted effort to talk to this next generation of voters, because the sleeping giant, there's this idea that the sleeping giant is, a specific, my abuelita's age, but it also includes young people. And at the end of the day, young people are going to be the ones to put this country, the state, our community, our districts on the right path. And so we just got to get out and vote. And whenever we go out and vote down ballot. They did away with straight ticket voting, as a lot of people already know. So please complete the ballot, because it is so important, especially for us down ballot races, that we get those votes. Don't just hit president or a U.S. senator and leave. Vote down ballot, because the more local your race, the bigger the impact it has on your daily life. And so, we got to get out there.
Definitely. Thank you all so much for your time and your amazing words of wisdom and your perspective. I hope people feel as inspired as I did, and also maybe inspired to help work and support your campaign. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I hope everyone else continues to, like everyone else said, wake up, vote, and help turn Texas blue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.